Why nothing feels truly random anymore. At first, it felt like coincidence. Trends appearing at the same time. Markets moving before news broke. Decisions aligning across millions of people without coordination. But slowly, a deeper realization set in. These outcomes weren't random. They were patterned. Today, randomness feels rare because systems are constantly predicting, filtering, and shaping what happens next. To understand why this matters now, we have to look at how probability gave way to optimization and how the world began responding to signals before events even occurred. For most of history, randomness was real. Weather surprised farmers. Market shocked traders. Success often looked accidental. Limited information meant limited foresight. People reacted to events as they unfolded, learning only after consequences arrived. The reveal begins when data started collapsing uncertainty. Every click recorded, every transaction logged, every movement analyzed. Patterns emerged where none were visible before. Behaviors became predictable not because people changed, but because systems learned faster than humans ever could. Once prediction became reliable, reaction became unnecessary. Platforms surfaced content before curiosity formed. Markets adjusted prices before fear appeared. Risk was priced in advance. What felt like spontaneity was often pre-calculated alignment between incentives, history, and probability. This shift changed how people experience reality. Outcomes arrived smoothly without surprise. Opportunities seemed reserved for those already positioned. Failures felt inevitable in hindsight. The world didn't feel chaotic anymore. It felt guided, but by something no one could point at directly. As automation deepened, systems began acting on predictions themselves. Algorithms didn't wait to see what would happen. They acted to ensure what was most likely did happen. Feedback loops tightened. The future became less about chance and more about reinforcement. What unsettled people wasn't the loss of randomness itself. It was a loss of agency it implied. If outcomes could be anticipated and nudged before choices were made, where did free will end and optimization begin? Because when nothing feels random anymore, it's not because chaos disappeared. It's because something else learned how to see it coming. As predictive systems expanded, their influence slipped quietly into everyday experience. People stopped encountering the unexpected. Recommendations appeared before questions formed. Routes adjusted before traffic built. Prices shifted before demand spiked. The world felt smoother, more responsive, and strangely prearranged. The conflict emerged when prediction crossed into direction. Systems didn't just forecast behavior. They shaped it. By surfacing certain options and hiding others, they narrowed the field of possible outcomes. Choice still existed, but it existed inside invisible boundaries defined by probability models rather than human intention. This created a subtle psychological shift. When outcomes felt inevitable, responsibility felt diluted. Success seemed less earned. Failure felt less surprising. People began attributing results to timing, algorithms, or luck, even as those forces quietly optimized around them. Agency blurred. In markets, this effect was stark. Trades executed before information reached humans. Volatility appeared without visible cause. Arbitrage closed gaps instantly. What once looked like randomness now looked like inevitability. By the time news broke, prices had already moved. The future had arrived early. In social systems, predictions shaped identity. Feeds reflected who people had been, not who they might become. Opportunities aligned with past behavior, reinforcing patterns instead of inviting exploration. Surprise diminished. Novelty became curated. The unexpected felt increasingly rare. Defenders argued this was efficiency. Reduced friction, better experiences, fewer bad outcomes. And in many ways, they were right. Prediction eliminated waste. It optimized resources. It reduced risk, but it also narrowed possibility. As these systems matured, people adapted. They learned to anticipate the predictors. They optimized their behavior to fit models they couldn't see. Creators chased algorithms. Consumers followed recommendations. Traders followed signals. Everyone learned the same lesson. To move forward, align with prediction. The deeper tension lay here. When the future is shaped by what is most likely, outliers struggle to exist. Change becomes incremental. Disruption becomes harder. The system doesn't forbid deviation. It simply doesn't reward it. The build-up pointed toward an uncomfortable question. If prediction removes randomness, what does it remove with it? Because randomness was never just noise. It was possibility. As prediction tightened its grip, the cost of certainty began to surface. Systems optimized relentlessly for what worked before, reinforcing familiar patterns while quietly filtering out deviation. The world grew more stable and more fragile at the same time. The conflict intensified when rare events started carrying outsized consequences. Black swans didn't disappear. They became more disruptive. Systems trained on probability struggled with novelty. When something truly unexpected occurred, reactions were extreme. Markets snapped. Platforms overcorrected. The absence of randomness left little room to absorb shock. People felt this emotionally. Life began to feel scripted. Opportunities appeared predictable. Failure felt permanent. When systems nudged behavior toward statistically safe paths, exploration carried hidden penalties. Curiosity declined. Risk-taking narrowed. The future looked smoother, but also smaller. In automated environments, prediction became self-fulfilling. Models trained on past behavior shaped present choices, which then reinforced the same data. Feedback loops hardened. What was likely became inevitable. Outliers weren't banned. They were simply starved of visibility, capital, and attention. Institutions leaned into this logic. Stability became the priority. Volatility was framed as failure. Systems were praised for reducing surprise. Yet surprise had always been how progress arrived. Breakthroughs rarely came from averages. They came from anomalies the system could not predict. As randomness faded, responsibility shifted again. When outcomes were predicted in advance, blame became ambiguous. Was failure a choice or a statistical certainty? Was success earned or merely aligned with a model? The more the future felt pre-shaped, the harder it became to locate accountability. The build-up reached a critical realization. Removing randomness did not remove uncertainty. It compressed it. Risk didn't vanish. It accumulated quietly, waiting for moments when prediction failed catastrophically. The world hadn't become predictable. It had become optimized for yesterday. And in a future driven by probability, the rarest thing of all was not failure. It was surprise. The turning point came when people stopped celebrating prediction as progress and started questioning what it was quietly removing. The comfort of certainty had come with a cost that was no longer theoretical. Possibility itself was being filtered out. The climax revealed a paradox. The more systems predicted behavior, the more they constrained it. What felt like foresight was often reinforcement. What felt like intelligence was often repetition at scale. The future wasn't being discovered. It was being narrowed. Out of this realization, a new awareness began to form. Prediction was not destiny. It was a tool, powerful, efficient, and dangerous when left unchecked. Designers began reintroducing randomness deliberately. Friction was added back into systems. Exploration was incentivized alongside optimization, not because randomness was efficient, but because it was necessary. The resolution reframed uncertainty as a feature rather than a flaw. Randomness allowed systems to adapt. It created space for emergence. It protected against fragility disguised as stability. Without it, progress slowed and shocks became catastrophic. The world didn't need less prediction. It needed better balance. Systems that could optimize without erasing possibility, that could guide without deciding, that could prepare for the future without locking it in place. Because randomness was never the enemy. It was a margin where change could still occur. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future. Why